All right, I'm gonna dive in. What do we think? All
Let's
right.
go.
Okay, great. Well, good evening, everyone. It is so great to have you all here. My name is Megan Bernstein, and I am the Alumni Engagement Manager at Marlborough. And I am particularly excited to welcome you to this April Aiming High. It feels like this has been almost a year and a half in the making. But I guess that's getting a little bit ahead of myself because I just want to make sure we take care of a little bit of Zoom housekeeping. So I have lots of questions for Annabel and Maya, but I definitely want to be able to take all of your questions as well. So if you want throughout the event, just drop those in the Q&A box, which you'll find just at the bottom of your Zoom bar, a little thought bubble or speaking bubble and says Q&A. I'll also keep an eye on the chat, but if it's a question for Annabel and Maya, please make sure that goes in that Q&A box just so we're sure to see it. And I think that's all the Zoom housekeeping. So it is truly my pleasure to introduce Maya Humes, the class of 2010, who is our inaugural 20Y award winner, and Annabel Schwedes Monaghan, class of 1987, who is our Woman of the Year. My goal tonight is to kind of give you the opportunity to get to know both of these incredible women just a little bit better. And I think, and I hope that you will very, very quickly see why honoring them as the Alumni Awards recipients this year was really such an easy decision for all of us. So rather than listening to me talk about them, I thought we could just sort of kick off the Q&A right away. And I just wanted to ask both of you to maybe introduce yourselves, tell us a bit about yourselves, the personal, the professional, the silly, the serious, what makes you, you? And Maya, maybe do you want to start, kick us off?
And of course, right as you said my name, there was an iTunes bubble that popped up. Thank you, Megan. I am, as Megan said, I am Maya. I graduated in 2010, and it is just really fun to be on with all of you, and can't wait to chat and hear all your questions, and also just hear about Annabel's experience. Annabel and I have been on a couple of these calls, and so I know that she is fantastic, and this will be really enjoyable to hear from her. Just a little bit about me. I just moved from LA, which is of course where I'm from, to DC. And so I was just telling Megan and Annabel, this is my currently not very furnished apartment, but you know, I'm excited to be here and excited to have this new adventure, which I've been wanting for a long time. Let's see. Some of the things that I've been loving recently are long walks around DC. It's my favorite way to explore new cities. So I've been taking as many walks as I can. I lived in LA most recently before I moved here, and was working on the Biden campaign, and was living with my parents, as many people did when COVID hit. So I moved back home and am very, very close to them. So that was really enjoyable. And now that I'm starting this new adventure, I'm excited to meet a lot of new people. I would say that's one of my favorite things to do. So walking, going to brunch, which hopefully will be a reality again soon. And, you know, just exploring new places are some of my favorite things.
All right. So I am Annabel. I'm mildly obsessed with Maya, and she starts to talk and then I forget why we're here. But I am a mother of 3 boys two of them are men, one of them's a boy. And I've just celebrated my 25th wedding anniversary to a wonderful man. He calls it 24 happy years, which he makes that a joke, but we've been married 25 years. I don't think it's very funny. And I am a writer, and I write a column, and I've published 4 books, 3 of which are young adult books. And I love doing that. And I live outside of New York City in the suburbs, and I love the suburbs. And the only fun fact that I could think about me is that I have just been released from quarantine after 14 days by the state of New York. And I was released yesterday and I barely noticed. I like quarantine. I got so used to being under quarantine. I was like, this is not a problem for me. And so I think the fun fact is that I'm an introvert. So all this being locked up has been perfectly fine with me.
Well, that's good. I know some people are not as fortunate to be an introvert and enjoy the lockup. So I guess take that as a positive silver lining of the time. Well, you both sort of alluded to this in sort of introducing yourselves, but would you tell us a little bit about about your work and your professional life, and how you decided on the field that you're in, and what you like about it? We can go in reverse. We can switch back and forth if Annabelle wants
I'll go
to take
first.
this one first.
So I really loved all my English classes at Marlborough. And I think that I always wanted to be a writer from when I was a little kid. But when I was at Marlborough, if anybody remembers Dr. Brackenhoff, like she was the #1 influence in my life, like taught me to love to read, to write, everything. So I really wanted to be a writer, and I went to college and I studied English. And then I was graduating from college, and you can't survive or make any money being a writer. I learned that pretty quick. And so I got a job on Wall Street, and I went and I worked at Goldman Sachs for a couple of years, and that got way off track from like what it was that I wanted to do. And I ended up going to business school, and I got an MBA, and then I found myself working in investment banking, which like wasn't really a fit for me, but I was just like, sometimes you just, an object in motion stays in motion. And I met my husband in business school, and we both worked in banking, and I got pregnant and I quit, which is the single best day of my life. So I didn't work for a while. And after I had a couple of kids, I started writing again, and I published my first book when I was 37. So this is my career, but my career really isn't very old. I started pretty late in life. So I wrote a nonfiction book for young adults, and then I wrote a couple of novels for young adults, and then I published a collection of essays for moms. And it's just kind of taken off from there. I have my first novel for adults coming out next summer, which I'm super excited about. And that's kind of how I got there.
Perfect. So I also had a transition from what I first started with, which was tech. So I graduated and moved to San Francisco, and everyone around me was working in tech. And so I decided to do that as well. And when I was in college, I studied American studies, and I also loved English in high school, loved history, loved all of the humanities classes that I took in high school and college. And so when I was in college, I decided I wanted to probably go into communications, didn't know how I was going to do it or where, but I, after graduating from college, got my master's, and then ended up moving to San Francisco and working in communications and what I got my master's in. And I think it was around when Trump got elected, around 2017, 2018, when I was starting to feel restless in San Francisco and starting to feel like I wanted a change. And politics had always been something that I was interested in. It wasn't something that I necessarily thought that I would have a career in, but I was definitely wanting to explore it at that point. So I started applying to all these random jobs so that I could get out of San Francisco and do something towards the 2018 election. Ended up getting a job in Florida, moved to Florida after living in San Francisco. And that was a crazy, informative, transformational experience that showed me that I loved politics and I wanted to work in it, and I wanted to do communications in politics. And that was exactly the focus that was making me happiest. So after living in Florida for a while, we in 2018 pretty much lost all of the elections that we were working on. So we lost the governor's race and we lost the Senate race there. And so was feeling demoralized, but still knew that I wanted to be in that line of work. And then I moved back to LA and still worked in politics, still worked for this political organization that was focused on mobilizing young people to vote. So focused on mobilizing 18 to 35-year-olds. And it was called Next Gen America. And after that, I wanted to work for a candidate, and who better than our senator from California, Kamala Harris. So I realized she was my dream person to work for. Was fortunate to know a couple people from college who were connected to people in her campaign, as well as a couple people that I knew in my current job. So ended up going over to her campaign to be her California communications director. And then of course she ended up dropping out, which again, you'll notice this. Politics has a lot of devastating moments, you know, when you work on something for a long time and it doesn't come to fruition in that moment. But then after working for Senator Harris, I worked for Bloomberg, and worked for a mayor who was his national co-chair. Again, didn't work out. But then I joined the Biden campaign, and of course Harris joined the Biden campaign too. So, you know, that was sort of the win that I was waiting for a long time. And I worked in North Carolina for the Biden campaign and was the comms director there. And then once he won, along with Harris, I was able to join the Biden-Harris administration. So that's the job I have now. And I work in the State Department. So my job is all foreign policy, everything. And I'm doing communications at the State Department in their Bureau of Global Public Affairs, which basically does a lot of the secretary's communications portfolio and focuses on the communications work of the foreign policy apparatus of the State Department. So it's been a huge change from campaigns to government. I can tell you that. It is a very, very different world. I'm happy to talk more about that as we go forward. But, you know, there are a lot of different avenues to go in this. And so just excited to be on this new path.
That's great. Thank you. I think something I guess I knew, but really noticed or consciously noticed for the first time as you were both answering that question is you're both very lucky to work in things that are to sort of found your passion and to be able to work in that every day. So I wonder, beyond it being your passion, if you could both share sort of what excites you every morning about going to work, and maybe even going to work looks different these days than it has, you know, 2 years ago. So what excites you? And then on the flip side, what is maybe a little more challenging or something that you don't necessarily look forward to as much?
Yeah, I'll go first. Yep, I'll go first this time. I would say what excites me about this line of work is that every single job that I've had has been similar. It's all been communications. That's always been what I've wanted to focus on, but they've been extremely different and they've all been insane learning experiences. So, you know, whether it's going to a new state and learning about the political landscape of that state and trying to understand how to make an impact there when you're not from there, or now working in the federal government in a field that I've never had experience in, with people who have worked in foreign policy for their whole careers. You know, it's always a learning experience where you're being trusted with decisions, but you're like, don't know that I have the experience or the knowledge to be trusted with these decisions. But, you know, you kind of step up to the plate in a lot of these roles, and just hope that the experiences you've had before are going to help inform you in that new role. So I would say that's really great. It's always a challenge. The other good part about this job is I'm now going into work, which I haven't done in a very long time. I'm wearing, you guys know, in shows or I don't know, movies, anything where people wear like fancy clothes to go to work. That's never been something that I've done. But now I'm wearing stockings and I'm wearing dresses and heels. I can't even walk in heels, but I'm wearing them because I'm thinking I'm going into work and everyone's wearing suits, so I need to be wearing heels. And it's fun. It's something I've never done. It's a fun new adventure. So that's another good side of it, is that, seeing people again has been good. Annabelle, though, I am kind of with you. I'm like, I like a lot of the downtime that I've been able to get. So seeing people every day has been more exhausting than it's ever been. While it's also been great to connect with people in person, you can really get to know them better. The downtime is very nice. And then I would say the thing that's tough is that you are entrusted with a lot of responsibility really quickly. And in these roles, you're not given a ton of onboarding or guidance. You're kind of just thrown into it. And so when you're going from campaigns to a huge bureaucratic structure, you're being thrown into this structure that you don't know very much about, but everyone else around you knows a lot about it. And so, I would say that's a tough challenge of working in this field, and now working in government is the steep learning curve, and really trying to both learn and also be presentable in these spaces where people are saying, oh, give this presentation on, this thing that you probably don't know that much about, but, why not just do it? So I would say those are the two sides of the role.
Well, we couldn't have more different jobs. Mine's like, if you feel like working, you do. If you don't, you don't. I would say that my favorite thing about writing is really the most basic thing. First of all, it's really fun. But in a sense, it's something that has always sort of helped me to process my understanding of the world. So I see something and then I write about it, and then that's not right. And then I rewrite it. And then by the time I'm done doing that, I have a sense for what this thing is that I'm trying to understand. And that can be in writing an essay, or that can be in writing fiction, but it's something that I'm wrestling with. And then in the end, I understand it and it's on paper. And so the extra bonus is, God forbid somebody reads it and it resonates with them. Like, then it's like the most exhilarating feeling in the world. But even if it doesn't, it's like I've vetted a thought and my understanding of something. So that's fantastic. I also like working by myself. I like being able to wear whatever I want to wear, although I do get dressed. I think it's depressing not to get dressed. I get dressed to work because what would happen to us? The thing that I find really challenging about writing as a job or even as a task is that it's not like shoveling snow or ironing or something where if you did it for 3 hours, you're sure to make progress. So like if you sit down and write for 8 hours, you could very easily come up with nothing. And then some days you sit down and write for 2 hours and come up with everything. So it's almost like there's this feeling of it, you're not in control of it because it might not happen today. And I don't like that, because then it makes you a little bit superstitious. You're like, well, last time I wrote something good, I had the light on in the hallway. Yeah, I'll put the light on in the hallway again. Oh, I think I had eggs for, and you get really like crazy about what it takes to create good writing. But sometimes no matter how hard you work, it just doesn't happen. So that's a little scary.
Yeah, I can imagine that would, I would hope, sort of be on anyone's mind. I don't know, just to not be in control would be a strange feeling.
You're not in control.
But then you have this creative outlet, which I would imagine is then like the sort of the high point on the other end, as you said.
It's worth it.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Annabelle, do you have any superstitions? Anything that you're like, this is what's gonna, or
Is this
can you?
the Annabelle's Weird channel now? We gotta share all this. No, I always light a candle. And I started something that I really liked. And I like to write all over the place. I move around when I write, but I started something that I liked, and I never wrote another word of it when I wasn't in that exact same spot. Like I did start to think that this is the spot where it's going to happen. And I light a candle.
Yeah, I mean, I've just, any writer that I've like really dug into has these spaces that they write in, or, things that make them feel like they have the ideas that they want to put on paper.
And it's also a head game, right? Because it's like little kids, you put on a cape and you think you're a superhero. Like, if I've got my laptop in just the right place, oh yeah. And then, I've just given myself permission to have it work out.
Yeah.
That made me think you're both writers. I mean, Maya, in communications, writing, I imagine, is a large part of your job. So short question, do you start electronically or do you start pen and paper?
I write electronically because I can't read my writing. Sometimes I can make lists, but then I can't even go back to them. So I always I start with a blinking cursor.
Yeah, I do too. I journal on a computer. I know a lot of people journal on paper, but yeah, pretty much everything happens on the computer these days. There's a lot of Google Docs out there that I've jotted notes on.
That's great. Well, pivoting a little bit to kind of looking backwards, something I love asking at these Aiming Highs is about your experience at Marlborough and your time at Marlborough. So while you were at Marlborough, would you give us a little snippet of what you were involved in as a student? And then also looking back on that time, are you surprised at all with where you've ended up? And I think you've alluded to this in some of your other answers, but.
My first year. So I was like an English student. I skated through my other classes. I did whatever I had to do, but that was what I was really interested in. I was also student body president when I was at Marlborough. And there's a really unappealing picture of me on the wall in a conference room. Sometimes I hope they've taken it down when I think of it. It's not good. But I had a chance to do a lot of speaking when I was at Marlborough, just because I was student body president. It was like spontaneously, like, the kind of stuff you have to do now, like go get up and talk about something you don't know anything about. And now that I'm writing, but I also do a lot of speaking. I really think that all started when I was at Marlborough. That was what I spent a ton of my time doing. Also, when I was at Marlborough, I was boy crazy as a teenager, and it would probably shock you. But I do remember my friend Paige Bradley saying to me one time, we're like all sitting right outside the library at lunch, and I'm going on about something, some boy who didn't call. I mean, this is like the story I told for 4 years. And she said, you really should be a romance writer. And everybody laughed, like, because that was a funny thing to say. But I swear to God, in that moment, I was like, she's right. That is what I am going to end up doing. And I'm not really a romance writer, but like the romance is usually the best part of the stuff I write. So it all started at Marlborough.
It did all start at Marlborough for me too. Annabel, we've realized this before, but I was also student body president, and it just came back to me, obviously, when you said that.
Practically sisters.
I know. At this point, I was student body president, and that tracks, I think, being in government now. I also did theater, so I did drama ensemble. And Megan, I know we have some very good pics of us being in plays together when we did drama ensemble together. And what else? I played tennis. And I loved the English and history classes. So it's funny how your path can take you in a different direction, as in my path took me into tech, which I never thought that I would end up in, but my environment in college and in San Francisco was so tech heavy that I ended up going into content marketing, and actually really loved that. I really loved the company that I worked at, which is a software company, and I loved the people, but the actual work in terms of our mission and what we were working for at the end of the day just didn't resonate with me as much as politics does now, and as much as government, more than politics, government, and feeling like you have an impact on people and on policy has been really fulfilling. And I think being student body president, just being in student government the whole time I was at Marlborough, was also kind of that feeling of just connecting to people, feeling like what you were doing was making people happier at the end of the day, being able to meet different people in all parts of the school because of that student government work was really fun. And so I think that definitely translates to what I'm up to now.
Yeah, I thought of getting those pictures ready to like show up on the screen, and then I thought that's not flattering for either of us. They're very funny though. If you're ever in the Marlborough archives, you can find them.
Yeah, we were in a play together. It was it was
the play?
fun to look back at. It was Secret in the Wings. And we were remembering exactly what that was about. It was kind of, Megan, this could just be my imagination, but to me, it was like a Beauty and the Beast dynamic.
It was something, yes, yeah, it was something like that. But I think it was a lot of fairy tales in one show. This was in the era where Marlborough Theatre seemed to do the most obscure production we could find, which made it interesting, but the pictures are really something else. So you'll have to come visit the archives one day.
Yeah, exactly. Let us know if you guys want to see these strange pictures. We can send them to you after.
Yeah, privately. They'll self-destruct after 10 minutes or
something.
But kind of, again, going back to your days at Marlborough, if you now could give a piece of advice or say anything to you on your first day at Marlborough, what would you want to say?
Is it me now?
That's you.
Oh, if I could go back to the first day of Marlborough. Gosh. I think if I could go back to my high school self, and my high school self was just so nervous about college and so nervous about what I wanted to do. And if I could go back, and it's hard because when you're in high school, you like don't really believe the advice that people tell you about your life path. You're like, yeah, but I'm in high school and that doesn't feel true. But I really, I would say that something I've learned since I graduated is that there's real flexibility in what you can do with a humanities degree. Like, I feel like people tell you in high school and in college that loving English and loving history, it's not practical. It doesn't turn into anything in the same way that, going into math or loving math, going into something that's math related in college, or loving science, going into something that's science related, really translates into the real world. I found that after graduating, it was hard, just like any job search is hard, but there were so many jobs, again, in tech that I felt like I could be fulfilled by. And I was fulfilled by doing writing in tech. And now I'm, doing writing in politics. And Annabel is, of course, a writer and writing novels and all these things. So I just think there's still such a narrative around loving history and loving English, and that not being able to be translated into something tangible. And I just want to shake my high school self and say, that's not true. Like, you don't have to love math and science, and it's great if you do, but if you don't, that doesn't mean that your career paths are at all condensed. There are so many avenues open to you. And would also say, on the not career related side, that you're gonna make really good friends in high school, and some of them are still my best friends to this day, but there are so many friends you make at different phases of your life, like really great college friends that I have now, and friends that I met in San Francisco who I never thought I would meet. Didn't think I was really going to meet new people in San Francisco. Just thought I was going to hang out with college friends. Ended up meeting people through work, and otherwise here I'm hoping to meet new friends. So there are just so many times in your life when you're able to meet new people. And I think sometimes when you're in high school, you're like, these are my friends. Like, what am I going to do if anything happens with them, if there's drama, if there's a fight? But there are just so many opportunities to meet new people, which has been one of the really fun parts of having so many jobs over the past years.
So I came into Marlborough in the 9th grade. So I was the new girl. There were 2 new girls in the 9th grade. And so I walked in, and the first thing I think I would say is the hair. I mean, no one needed to have hair like that. Like, it looked good on Madonna, didn't look good on anybody else. So I would have advised myself against getting another perm. That would have been my first piece of advice. And then I think that I would tell myself just not to worry so much. I think I was born worrying that, like, I would never make anything of myself, and that I was just never going to find the thing. I was just always so worried about my future. And it bothers me so much when I hear, people who are 14, 15, 16, 17 already thinking, oh, it's too late for me. I couldn't, like, I hear people, Maya, say, oh, I couldn't go into tech because I didn't take computer science in middle school. I'm like, what? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So I think I would tell myself to relax. I would say the opposite advice that you gave yourself, Maya. I would tell myself, you are about to make the best friends you're ever going to have in your life. And for me, I've made a lot of friends since I left high school, thank God. But I've never made friends like that. Those to me are like the greatest friends. So I probably would have told myself, slow down, hang on a little tighter, because that's as good as it gets.
The perm, that was such a beautiful way to end, and I'm gonna now go back to the perm comment and just say
I have photos. I could just share those. It's unbelievable. And a full mouth of braces.
Oh, we could have had a whole like embarrassing photo compilation that we put together.
No, it's something else. It's really something to behold.
And it's so funny too, the way trends change, because I'm thinking back to my days at Marlborough, and if my hair had one curl, kink, anything in it, I was miserable. It had to be stick straight.
God, you're so young. That was not what was happening when I was in high school. Oh. Bigger the better.
But yeah, about that end, that gave me chills, because that's also real, those bonds that you have.
And I think it was, for me, first of all, I was boy crazy. So it was for me to be in an environment all day where it was just with my girlfriends without any distraction. And, so much stuff happened during those 4 years, great things, horrible things. So it was just, those were wonderful friendships for me.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, definitely. I am curious if and how mentorship has played a role in your lives, either personal or professional, and if you could maybe talk a little bit about those relationships.
When I was working in finance, I didn't have really mentors, and particularly female mentors. There weren't a lot of women around. And it may have just been where I was, but I didn't have the feeling they wanted other women around. So, and I think I really could have benefited. I still don't think I would have been a very good banker, to be honest, but I think I could have benefited from a little bit of mentoring and encouragement in that sense. I don't think of writing as like a networking job. You know what I mean? Like, in the end, you're alone in front of your computer and that's all you have. But I have had, in writing, I've had a lot of relationships with other writers, particularly with women who are older than I am, who are kind of putting a hand out to bring me along. And it's more moral support than anything else. Like, nobody can help you tell your story, but just sort of an ear to say, yeah, I've been through the same thing. I've found that to be really helpful. And also in my personal life, like, I spend a lot of time being a mom. Having female friends who are 15 years older than I am has made all the difference in the world. Because, when you have little kids and you're like, your whole day is about, a diaper, who can tie their shoe, who didn't learn to read, you're like so in your head about the details of where you are. to have a friend or like a mom mentor who's 15 years older, who's like, this isn't going to matter. It's okay. You know, my kid's like drunk in my basement right now. That's the problem. Like what you're doing isn't the problem. I have found that to be like the best kind of mentorship for me.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
How did you meet friends 15 years older than you?
So, like I have this beautiful neighbor you know, in my neighborhood, in my community, at
Got
my
it.
church, sometimes like your oldest child will be a little bit younger than somebody else's youngest child. So you get to know that mom who's so much farther along than you are. And she's not competing with you either. So that's also kind of nice.
Right. Yeah, no, that's something I'm gonna think about. Wow, Annabelle story was so interesting to me. I forgot what the actual question was.
It was
Oh,
about
mentors.
mentors. Yeah. You
I
could
was like,
now that I said that, you can talk about Kamala Harris.
I'm gonna take Annabelle's advice and think about what women I can meet who are 15 years older than me. And yeah, I mean, actually, when I think about mentors at work, the people who have been really impactful for me have been my bosses. And so, speaking of Kamala Harris, when I worked for her, the woman who hired me and who was my boss hired me when I wasn't, you know, in the typical sense qualified to take that job. I had never worked for a candidate. I had never worked on a campaign. When I was at my previous job, I'd worked on multiple campaigns and I worked for an organization, but working for a candidate is much different. So she really took a chance on me. And at every single step, she pushed me, and she pushed me in very scary moments. Like she would push me to prep Kamala, for example. And so like prepping is basically Kamala has an interview. I should call her Vice President Harris. She has an interview, and you know, at that time I was California communications director. So I would be prepping her for interviews that were happening in California. And I would just feel so intimidated. And I would be like, well, I think someone else can prep her. I think someone on the national team who has more experience than me can. She's like, no, you can do it. You're going to do it. You're just going to prepare. We're going to talk about what might come up. We're going to talk about how this goes, and you're going to do it. And she did that to me multiple times. And each time was scary until it wasn't. And it was because she kept having me do it when I was extremely intimidated and when I didn't think that I was qualified to. So after that job, when our vice president dropped out, and it was devastating for us because she was our candidate, my supervisor pushed for me to get my next job and was just always looking out for me, helping me talk to people about what opportunities were available, connected me with someone who ended up on really senior on the Biden campaign, who is now another mentor of mine. So that's what's also crazy, is that mentors can connect you with other people who then become your mentor in this space. And it's always been women. It has, and it's always been women who have kind of been in a similar position of not feeling qualified, feeling that imposter syndrome where you don't feel like you're qualified to be in a space or qualified to do a certain part of your job, and that person really pushes you to do it. And so yes, incredibly grateful for the mentors I've met at work, and definitely would not have had my resume pushed into these networks without them. And then you know, those mentorships have really bled into my personal life. Like now my supervisor from that campaign is a friend, and I just admire her so much, but also now we have a really close personal relationship. And one more mentor I have to mention is my mentor from college, who is a professor, and I did research for her for 3 years. And again, started off as a professional relationship. I did research for her for a long time for her book, and then turned into a personal relationship where, again, she's a friend of mine, and someone I really look up to. So I think mentors are extraordinary in this world. And a lot of times when people won't advocate for you, to get you in spaces, those mentors are the ones who will fight even harder, than you possibly expect to get you into those spaces.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. I have more questions, but I just want to remind everyone that if you have questions, please put them, feel free to put them in the Q&A, and we will take a look at those. But while you're all thinking of your questions, I'll ask, this past year and a bit has been a rather strange one for so many reasons. And so I kind of wanted to ask a lighter question, hopefully, of what has sparked joy for you this past year? How have you found happiness in the last year that we've lived through together?
Maya?
Yeah, I would say, going back to the point of just what is core to who I am, I think my family has been a big part of that. So again, when I was on these different campaigns and all of them were happening during the pandemic, I was living at home with my parents. And gosh, we talk about this all the time, but when I left home in college, or when I left home to go to college, I was so excited to leave. I was like, I wasn't looking back. No one was crying. It was like pure joy. I was excited to meet all these new people, new adventure. And then when I just moved to DC, and left my parents, I was sobbing. And it's just a testament to how much they've been a support system forever, but not especially, they've been a support system forever. But when I think about things that spark joy in the past year, it's been living at home with them and being adult friends with them. And so, like, not just them being my parents, but actually really enjoying hanging out with them and spending Friday nights with them, and that just feeling like enough. Whereas in high school and college, it felt like, okay, I'm gonna hang out with my parents, but then I need to like go see my actual friends. I'm like, my parents are my friends now. So that's been awesome. And then I just got engaged, which was very exciting. And I think a reason why we were able to have so many conversations about our future this year was because it slowed down. Because even though we both have these crazy jobs, we were able to be in the same space more. I was able to go and, live with him for months at a time, weeks at a time. And we were just able to spend a lot of good time together, which would not have happened were it not for the slowness of this year. So I'm definitely grateful for that. And I think those are the main things. I think just relationships and how they've surprisingly gotten stronger, kind of across the board because of this.
I give a similar answer. I have, when this all went down, I had one child at home. He was 14 at the time. So suddenly my college son is home doing school from home. And my husband, who was never home, we'd see him, for a late dinner. He's home all the time. And my son, who has graduated from college, is now home working from home. And it's like some crazy episode of The Office. The five of us working like high school, college jobs, all of us working at home, people walking up and down stairs in their button-down shirts and their underwear. I mean, it's just like the whole thing was so funny in a way. And as much as it broke my heart for my kids, because they are I don't even know if they know how much they're missing out on, but I guess they'll get life back. It was just so fun for us to all know each other in a different way. Like you said, Maya, it's like I could sort of see what, my son is like at work because I'm overhearing him on a conference call. And, they would stop in and say, how's that going? And they'd read something that I wrote. I mean, it was just, I don't know, it was fun. We had a lot of water cooler time. I liked it.
That's great. I hope that makes it into a next book, Annabel, because I think so many people would identify with that experience, and with your voice. I think it would be so enjoyable to hear your experience of it.
My kids would kill me. The only way I can say this is I know this they're not going to see this, right?
Not unless you show them.
Okay, we're good.
You can names change to protect privacy.
Yes, those other kids I have.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, so Maya, a question came in for you asking about maybe comparing and contrasting a bit working in the private sector versus obviously the very public federal government. She notes that wearing stockings is one difference that you mentioned, but could you maybe speak to some of the other differences you've experienced?
Yes, the wardrobe is a huge difference, truly. I had to buy so many new shoes and dresses to work in this space. I think in the private sector, and again, I only worked in tech, there was just more relaxed energy, in terms of clothing, in terms of the workplace. It was like all open. No one had an office. It was just like completely the same space, whether you were high up in leadership or you were just starting at the company. So I think that that was definitely a part of the culture at my company, and I know that's just been a part of the culture at a lot of tech companies. Whereas at the State Department, everyone has an office or a cubicle. And obviously with COVID, that's actually ideal, but it's just like, it's a very rigid workplace in that sense. And I would say, the actual work, of course, is really different too. Like in the private sector, I was constantly thinking about customers, and I was constantly thinking about what they would want and what content they would be interested in. And that was my audience, right? And when that's your audience, yeah, you have a really different way of thinking about it. But now that I'm in the public sector, it's much more about thinking about all different types of people and what they might want to know. Like you're thinking about like 18-year-old boys, and you're thinking about 45-year-old women, and you're thinking about people of all races. And you're really trying to figure out what connects with any person who is in America, and in this job, any person in the world. So we're looking at what might work with people in Latin America versus what might work with people in China. And so it's definitely different in so many ways. I would say one surprising thing is actually the similarity, though, in that the State Department is rigid, like I said, in terms of some of those structural workplace things, but they're actually being flexible with telework in a way that I never expected the federal government to be, because they've been forced into it. And so my manager, for example, wants me in the office, so I'm going in the office every day, but has also said that when I don't have to be in the office, when I don't have meetings that need to take place at the department, then I can work remotely, because they've really re-engineered everything to work in a telework environment. And she anticipates that moving forward, there will be much more flexibility with remote work. Even when the pandemic is over, even when safety concerns are not in the picture, she thinks that there will be this openness to it. And I'm like having trouble wrapping my mind around that, because there's such a narrative in the federal government and in campaigns around like, you need to be in person. This is such mission critical work. You can't do this from home. But I do think that mentality is shifting, and I'd be really interested to see if it actually shifts a bit, in the same way that, of course, the private sector is really shifting, because they're thinking about profit, and they're like, well, we actually kind of profit if people aren't coming in. That's kind of good for us. In the federal government, there's not really a change in profit, but it's a change in who you can recruit, and it's a change in just how people approach the work, I think.
Thank you, Maya. Annabelle, a question came in for you asking if you could talk a little bit about your upcoming book, the new book that's going to be released.
I've
And
only mentioned it twice. I was hoping to mention it a third time. I'm plugging this book like crazy.
Kim kind of teed you up well for it. She also asked
to do that. Yeah,
yes, and she also asked if you could talk a little bit about how you came up with the idea, and then also the process of actually getting a book published.
Oh my gosh, that's too many questions, Kim. But thank you for asking. So I do have a book, and I would really love to like promote it, but it doesn't have a title, so that's driving me crazy. I wrote this book in the spring, and it is the story of a screenwriter whose husband leaves her, and she writes a movie about their divorce, and it's sold as a feature film. And the guy who plays her husband in the movie, the two of them fall in love. So that's the premise for the story. It's fun. So I sent it to my agent who's published my other books, and she never responded. And it was like, seriously ghosted me for like 5 months. And I had my family read it, and I had a couple of my writer friends who were like, no, I really like this. I'm like, but my agent's ghosting me. So finally I like manned up, and I went and got a new agent, and she sold the thing in a day. Like it just like happened really quickly. So GP Putnam Sons, which is Penguin Random House, is going to publish it next summer. So to answer your question, Kim, I don't know how books get published. It's like so crazy. It's like so random. Like it either happens really quickly, or it happens really slowly, or it doesn't happen at all. This one happened really quickly, so I was thrilled. And the editor is like this brilliant person that I just feel really lucky to work with. So it's been a really good experience.
That's so exciting. And how do you find you come up with the ideas for this book or for any of the books you've written?
You know, I actually, so they film the movie at her house, which is why the actor is there, and she gets to know him and they fall in love. And a couple of years ago, Justin Timberlake moved to my town for like 3 months. They were filming something nearby, and he lived in my town. And all of a sudden, all the women in my town are taking their kids out for ice cream in like blown out hair and makeup. And everybody's like putting themselves together in case they run into Justin Timberlake. And I thought that was so funny. And so that kind of, I mean, there were a lot of things that sparked the idea, but it was just like, what would it be like to have a movie star living in your sleepy town? And then wouldn't that be nice if he fell in love with you? So fun.
Oh, that is fun. Oh, I can't wait to read it. I'm so excited.
I can't either. That sounds so good.
Thank you. It's a fun story. I mean, you can read it in a day.
Seriously. She sold it in a day. So
yeah, that was crazy.
That's crazy.
That was crazy.
It's obviously amazing.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. So I have all the edits are due by the end of this month. So I'm like in final exams for the entire month of April. That's sort of what it feels like.
Well, we all can't wait to reap the benefit of that and get to read the story. Well, I know we're coming up on the end of the hour, so can I get in one more question? Do you both have time?
Sure.
Okay. I guess it could feel like kind of a big one, but I like to ask, looking ahead, what's next? Like what are dreams or wishes or things on the horizon for each of you?
Maya's getting married.
I am. It's happening in a long time from now, but it is very exciting. That is something that's on the horizon for sure. And that's probably going to be in late 2022 or 2023, because I'm here and he's in San Francisco. So we're making the planning work. And what else? I'm excited. I mean, I'm excited to be in a new place, and I'm excited to really build good, strong relationships here, and meet new people that I'll look back at and, think about the time before I knew them and before we were really good friends and be like, wow, I can't believe how far we've come since then. So I'm excited for that and exploring a new city. And in terms of what's on the horizon, can't wait to, feel like I'm really good at my job. No, but seriously, I'm excited for a point when I feel really settled in the job and when I feel like I'm like hitting my stride, because anyone who's had a job that kind of felt out of their league or felt like a huge challenge knows the feeling when you finally feel like you are like, it's still hard, but you're in it and you're managing it and you feel like you're making an impact in the way that you want to. So I know that will come. I am optimistic and confident in that. So that will be very exciting. And then we'll see what happens after this job. But, I'm going to hopefully be in it for a little while.
Well, I have a new book coming out. Did we talk about that? Have we covered that? I just
Yeah.
The other thing I have that's kind of exciting, or I'm excited about, is I have a new author series that's going to be in person when we can, but for now it's just going to be on Zoom. But it's starting next week. It's called Friends with Words. Do you get it? Because remember there was that game Words with Friends. I think maybe people don't get it. Anyways, it's going to be a series where I interview authors who have books coming out like, that week. And I'm really excited about that because it's fun. It's really fun to talk to people about like where their stories came from and what their process was and where they find themselves in the novel that they wrote. So I'm excited to do a bunch of that for the rest of the year.
That's great. Well, we've just hit exactly an hour, so I suppose this is as good a place as any to wrap up, but this has been such a delight. Thank you both for sharing so much of your time and yourselves with us. Just feel like this is truly such a treat. And I hope that everyone watching will also be joining us tomorrow for Alumni Day, for our sort of formal award ceremony during the morning assembly programming, where you'll get to hear even more from Maya and Annabel and really properly celebrate their awards. And then, of course, don't forget that we also have one last Aiming High for our spring series coming up on May 11th. So you'll get more information about that in your emails. But thank you again to Maya and Annabel. And I guess I'll say on behalf of the entire alumni community, congratulations on your awards. They are very, very well deserved.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Well, I hope I will see both of you.
We got your Friends with Words.
You did get it?
Yes, that's what's happening in the chat.
In the chat. So
you guys see, Marlborough girls are the smartest girls. I just don't want to have to explain it, but I think it's good. I like it.
Sorry that we left you hanging for a little too long. That was on us, but we get it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you.
I hope I'll see you both in person very soon. And thank you again and be well.
All right. Thanks for everything, Megan.
Bye.
Bye.